Let's date forever. Here's your weekly dose of relationship fuel with Sammi and Nathan Jaeger. Hello and welcome to Date Forever. This week's episode is all about celebrating our 4th birthday of the Date Forever podcast.
Woohoo! Yeah. Happy birthday, baby.
Yeah, happy birthday.
If you've listened to the show before, you will know that one of our mantras is that what gets celebrated gets repeated. So we are celebrating 4 years of being in your ears.
That's it. So the format of this episode is going to be a little bit different to some of our other ones, and Sammi and I are going to ask each other 4 questions about the Date Forever podcast and about the journey that we've been on so far.
So when we were brainstorming what we wanted to do to acknowledge this episode, this was one of the ideas, and I just want to preface that we have not shared our questions with each other. So this is going to be off the cuff, and I'm not entirely sure what's going to happen. So I've got 4 questions to ask Nath, and he's got 4 for me. So let's see how this goes. Do you want to start, babe? Question 1?
Yeah, sure.
Well, actually, should we start with what's been fueling you up lately?
Well, this last week has been birthday week for me, so that's been very much fueling me up. And my parents also came over to Sydney to help celebrate birthday week. It was a little bit just coincidental timing, but also really nice to be able to celebrate with them and for them to take me out for a really nice lunch as well over the weekend. So that's definitely been fueling me up. What about you, Sammi? What's been fueling you up?
Well, I had a little solo vacay to Gold Coast.
You did?
Yeah, for a business retreat. And then I extended for a couple of days to have some time on my own, which was really nourishing and definitely added some fuel to the tank. I've made some pretty big decisions in my business and career tank. Yeah. That's been fueling me up lately. And of course, showering my beautiful husband in birthday energy and love also really fueled me up. So do you want to kick us off, Nath?
Yeah, for sure.
What is your first question for me?
So the first question is, what's the one thing that a guest has shared on our show that we've implemented in our marriage that you really love?
We've implemented so many things, but I would say the thing that has had the most amount of ripple effect impact, and we talk about it all the time because it's had so much impact, is our weekly happy hour.
Yeah.
So on a Sunday afternoon, generally on a Sunday, we have our check-in chat. Where we check in on an agenda of things. You can grab your own copy of this, sammijaeger.com/freebies. And this was introduced to us by very early in year 1, Harry and Tristan. One of the guys shared that this is something that their relationship therapist had shared with them in their marriage, and it was working really well for them. We've adapted it, made it our own, and it's definitely evolved over the time that we've been using it. But I think that's definitely the tool. It's free, it's customizable, and we've definitely made it fit our own relationship. But I think it's my number one because we've been really consistent about it. But I feel like it's got the greatest ripple effect because it helped us build some communication skills, some conflict resolution skills, some resilience, some expansion, so many things. So that's mine. All right, Nath, question number 1 for you. On our show, one of the things that we've talked about and shared was one of the practices that we have in our own marriage is our 2x2x2 date night rhythm. So twice a month going out for a date, every second month going for a night away, and then twice a year taking a holiday. So in that framework of 2x2x2, we've been doing it for quite a few years now, but this is sort of a 2-pronged question. What do you find easiest about that framework, and what do you find hardest?
I think the easiest thing that I find about that framework is the cadence and consistency that we do things. So I think that the structure really helps set the rhythm for our dating, the priority for our dating, and the anticipation as well for our dates, knowing that there's going to be something coming up or that we've got something prioritized. I think we also do really well during our annual planning that we will take a bit of a look ahead in the calendar and try and map out when we might want to have those weekends away and have those bigger holidays as well. So I think that rhythm is really what I find easiest about the practice. And what I find hardest about the practice is sometimes I think I still overcomplicate dates when I'm planning them, and that I try and make every date bigger and better than the last one or some huge big event, when really a date can be a very, very simple activity.
Great answer.
All right, so next one from me. So which guest that we've had on the show has been really surprising to you, that has come out with a surprising framework or methodology or something like that?
That is a really hard question with we've probably had more than 200 individual guests on the show.
Yeah, it is a bit of a tricky one.
So
pretty big catalogue.
Yeah, it's funny because the one that came to mind is probably a bit of a cop-out because it was so recent. I think it was in the last 5 episodes with Ellen Dorian, and she had her 5 business strategies that are really incredibly transferable to relationships.
You do love a business strategy that transfers to relationships, so it's probably not a surprising one.
Yeah, so that one really sticks out with me. But then another one in a different tank of Humming Household, Bridget Johns, and her idea of using 1% of your day to add fuel to a tank, and particularly in her world, being an organization specialist, about using that 1% of your day, which is about 14 minutes. So I think about that framework and that idea regularly and the way to apply it. So much so that I've got a visual cue above my computer at my desk that says, what could you do in 15 minutes? So that one really resonates with me a lot as well, because sometimes we, like almost what you were saying with the need for dates to be bigger and better and bells and whistles, no, just bring it back to what can I achieve in 15 minutes?
Yeah.
And sometimes I really need that reminder. Another, I don't know if you call this a framework, but another idea that I think about regularly was from Amy Culler. Her episode talking about sex, and she used this analogy of one person in a relationship might really love spicy Thai food, and then the other person loves creamy pasta or a roast dinner. And if you try and blend those two things together, it's actually quite disgusting. And this idea that sex can be about one person and then getting their spicy Thai food, and then it can be about the other person. So that's probably a framework and an idea that we probably maybe not intentionally introduced, but I definitely feel like we have a rhythm around that in our relationship now.
Yeah.
And then another one, there's so many, but from Miranda Clare, and a really early episode, she helped create a visual for what does an interdependent relationship look like. And she told this story about, if we've got a couple and they're walking side by side and they've got a torchlight pointing out in front of them, that's their own hobbies, interests, friendship circles, career, everything that makes up that one individual person's life. And hopefully they're standing next to somebody else who has their own torchlight, and it's that beautiful overlap in the middle where the torch beams connect that is your shared interdependent life. So that's a framework that I think of really regularly about how important it is for us to, we say it on the show all the time that my relationship with myself sets the tone for every other relationship that I have. And I don't ever want to become reliant on just your torch beam, and vice versa. I don't want to be responsible to light our entire path in front of us. Yeah. I want you to bring your own torchlight. So that's a really tricky question, because that's even just quickly off the top of my head, those couple that really come to mind that I reference and think about regularly, if not daily, definitely weekly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good question.
Thanks.
The thing is that because we didn't share our questions, now I'm I want to ask you that question. But then I'm do I want to give up one of my own questions for your question?
Yeah.
All right, Nath. Question number 2.
Hit me.
We started this podcast 4 years ago, and we were quite different people then. We've both grown and evolved and, of course, had lots of beautiful experiences in there. We survived a global pandemic, a lockdown, and I'm fundamentally a different person after that experience. But we had the idea and we had the audacity to start this show. And for me, it's given me a lot of things, but I would love to know, what do you feel are some of the gifts that hosting this show has given you over the last 4 years?
I think it's given so many things. So for me personally, I think it's definitely helped with self-confidence and putting myself out there and public speaking and leadership and a lot of those sorts of, I guess, softer skills, what you might call them. And so, yeah, for me, it's definitely helped me to develop in that kind of area. I think what else it has provided is access to some incredible experts that it's been an absolute pleasure of having the chance to chat to them, to pick their brain, to learn from them, to understand what they're passionate about and how we can go about implementing some of these things into our own relationship and continually grow in our relationship as well. So I think we started the show with the intent to be able to pull together all these lessons from experts and share them with the world, but I don't think I quite understood how much impact it would have on our own relationship in being able to implement a lot of these things ourselves and how much impact it would have on me personally as well. So Sammi, that leads me to question number 3, which is related to what I was just chatting about before in the impact that we were trying to create. So what is some of the impact or some of the feedback that we've received about the podcast that has really just touched you and warmed your heart?
One of the things that still catches me off guard about the show is that people want to know more about you and me and our relationship. Like in season 1 or year 1 of the show, we didn't even do that fuel up part at the beginning of the show. And it was only through feedback that we recognized, okay, people want to hear more about us and our relationship and how we're living and our intentional fueled up life and life by design. So that has been surprising. I also still get blown away when people are willing to share really personal stories. We do get people sliding into the DMs and sharing, which we are always like, podcasting is such a strange experience because we jump on the microphone, we have these cool conversations, we put it out in the world, and then you don't really, it's not like performing at a gig where everyone applauses afterwards. Like, you actually don't know how an episode landed, what resonated, what was interesting, what conversations it sparked.
It quite often is very one-sided.
Yeah, so when we do get DMs of people sharing like a tool that they implemented and how it's impacted them, or that they went on to work with one of our guests in some capacity, that's always really beautiful as well, to know that we opened a door for someone to walk through. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I'm always so grateful for the time that our guests are willing to give us to have these conversations, and not just the time, but then the vulnerability and the openness to talk about some of the hard things that they've experienced and some of the very intimate parts of their relationship to then publish on the internet for the world to hear if someone chooses. So that sometimes still feels surprising too, the willingness for people to want to have these conversations, but then that's almost reaffirming why we should be having them, because there is an appetite and there is an interest. So I'm not sure if I've answered your question.
Yeah, I think you have.
All right, Nath, question number 3, which you kind of led into at the end of your answer for question 2. We have had almost 200 conversations, intentional conversations with couples and experts about the tips and tricks they've found to keep a relationship fueled up, not only with ourselves, but our chosen person, and how that complements living a really intentional and fueled up life. So, what do you feel has been the greatest gift from the show, or the biggest impact on our personal relationship, you and me, our marriage? It's hard to remember the time when we like before running the show.
Yeah, it is.
Like we've been married for 11 years now and we've had the show for 4, which is like what, 30, my math's not great, 30% of our marriage. So what do you feel has been the biggest impact for us?
I think that it really is our weekly check-in chats. I think that has had a huge impact on our relationship. Probably sounds like a bit of a cop-out because it was your answer earlier. But I think it has had such an impact on our relationship in making sure we're on the same page, understanding where we would each like help and support, helping to recognise and appreciate each other as well for things that might have happened throughout the week that we haven't explicitly called out before, apologise for things that we might have done throughout the week that you or I are holding on to or that we may not be aware of as well. So I think it has been such a gift for our relationship, and it's one of those things and one of those tools that we continue to assess and evolve as well. We add little new bits and pieces into there, like the fair play cards and exchanging those as part of that same happy hour. And I think the big thing is that it really just helps to keep a lot of the logistics chat minimized to a short period on the weekend. I think the other big impact that the podcast has had on our relationship too is really an openness to discuss our own relationship with each other. After we have a lot of these big conversations, we often have quite a big debrief and share maybe some of the new language or the new lessons that we've just discussed, or talk about the takeaways that we can implement into our relationship. So I think just having that shared language, that openness to continually talk about and focus on our relationship has been so super positive as well.
I'm going to bonus answer my own question.
Yeah.
I feel like one of the gifts of having the show and the impact on our relationship, and I mean, we started the show because we had learned just how vitally important the quality of our relationships is and how much the quality of our relationship directly impacts the quality of our life. But I think having hosted the show for 4 years, having these conversations week in, week out, it just validates that over and over and over again. So I think I treated the health of our relationship as a high priority before we started the show. Yeah. And I feel like that's amplified even more now. There's very few things that I would allow to be a priority ahead of our marriage. Because I know that from a strong base between us, we can tackle so much more than if this space between us is not solid.
Yeah, we can.
And topped up, overflowing with fuel. And what a gift. What a beautiful gift to have learned in our first decade of marriage.
So, final question from me, question number 4. So from this 4 years and around 200 episodes that we've published, what's the key theme or key takeaway that you've taken from all of these episodes?
One of my favorite movies is Moulin Rouge. And there's this quote in that movie that love is all you need. And I think one of the core ideas that we unpack regularly on the show is just how false that is.
Yeah.
Love is not all that you need, and people who love each other can still really hurt each other. And people who love each other can still not have the skills to navigate the challenges that they come up against in life and their relationship, or for us and our relationship. So that's probably one of the biggest fairy tale busting parts of this show, is recognizing that relationship skills are skills. They can be learned, they can be developed. Your patterns can be unlearned. You can replace them with better ones. You set the tone and the culture for your relationship, and you can either do that by design or you can do that by default. But love is not enough. There's got to be a commitment to that same pageness and a shared goal that you're moving towards together. And to bring it back to my love of the intersection of business and relationships, I think it's vision, mission, and values and love. All right, Nath, question number 4 on our 4th birthday of the Date Forever podcast. What are your hopes and dreams for the show in the future? Not just for Date Forever, but for Fueled Up Life. What do you want? What do you see? Talking about vision and mission, what is it for you?
Well, I think the vision and mission hasn't changed since the start. And this was really to share with as many people as possible relationship skills and how to keep a good relationship good and make it even better, turn it into a great relationship. We know we've found our person. Now, how do we make that last, and how do we add even more fuel to that relationship? So I think that vision and mission is still so strong. And so what that looks like in, I guess, practical terms is getting the reach of this podcast out even wider. So I would really love for this podcast to be sponsored one day, and for Sammi and I to be able to spend more time and energy on the podcast as well to get it out to a lot more people. And I would love for our 8-tank Fueled Up Life methodology to be commonplace and to be something that is as common as Tony Robbins' Wheel of Life or something similar to that. So dreaming really big. How's that align to your vision and mission, Sammi?
I think I can get to the tactical faster because I want to do a TED talk talking about living by design and not by default, and the decisions that we make every single day that contribute to creating and living that fueled up life. I want to have it published as a book. I would love for our annual game plan idea and methodology to be commonplace for couples, that it's something that they do and live by, or create versions of it for themselves. I'd love to have for that ripple effect to get even bigger. And then there's the other parts where I'd love to have some like big names on the show. I would love to interview John and Julie Gottman one day. If anyone knows them or has a degree of separation, slide into the DMs. We would love an introduction. But so there's some things like that too, which would, I think, help amplify that reach too, and spread that message about dating yourself and your person for forever. To say thank you for joining us for this special 4th birthday episode of Date Forever, and for being on the journey with us, whether or not this is the first episode you've ever listened to or you've been with us since day one. We have given 40 bricks made of recycled plastic waste to build schools. This is one of our favourite projects. It's looked after by Classroom of Hope, and we've had Duncan and Nicola on their show, and they're so passionate about the multiple spheres of influence that this project has, for the environment, for income generation, and for education and equality. We're so grateful to be able to support the work that they do. So thank you for listening, and thank you for making that possible. This episode of Date Forever has been brought to you by Sammi Jaeger and the Fueled Up Life Lab. If you want to learn more, come on over to SammiJaeger.com, where you can access stacks of resources to help you fuel up your life and relationship. If you've loved this episode, share it with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an ep. Thanks for joining us and adding fuel to your tank.